This year's deer camp was unique in that it was the first
Here
year
we go.
that no one has talked about seeing a coyote, and especially no one has shot a coyote, because there, kind of like the thing we've talked about where people don't like shooting does because there's a rule and whatever.
Yeah, dumb rule.
There's also a rule: if you see a coyote,
on site,
you shoot it.
Bounty on coyotes.
Because they've had trail cams.
There's a pot.
They've had trail cams up looking at coyote dens. And one year they tracked them, bringing in like 14 fawns in a matter of like a couple days.
Oh, really?
2
was
weeks.
Wild. So they're taking out fawns, so they want you to shoot them. Well, this year they didn't see any, nobody shot any. So I'm looking into what, like, is the coyote population down or whatever. And I came across a really interesting group of studies done by the University of New Hampshire. They're researching how coyotes are responding to various pressures, whether it be human hunting, urban populations expanding, larger carnivores, that kind of stuff. And they found a lot of differences that they weren't expecting that kind of goes against like the normal things you think of when you think of coyote populations. So they suggest that human hunting may contribute to increase in coyote populations.
I've heard that.
Which, you think you're hunting them, that's reducing the population. But then what you're doing is you're getting rid of a lot of the coyotes that are out scavenging, hunting, whatever the fact. And established coyote populations, they'll tend to pick a pair, and those are the ones that reproduce. And that helps prevent younger coyotes from reproducing, which could potentially impact a pack somehow. Nature.
And breeding.
Whereas if you're hunting all of the older coyotes, you've now got a younger population that is more prone to immigrate to larger areas. And then on top of that, as we know, when they call, when you hear a coyote calling, if no one calls back, that causes a biological change that leads to increased litter numbers when they have the next.
It's an aphrodisiac.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But they're basically doing they're doing a census. They're howling. If there's a lot of howling, okay, just those two can keep having babies. If there's no howling, we got to get to going, and then they have more offspring.
Oh.
That, like, there's one deaf coyote who's just looking to get it. Like, I didn't hear nothing. He's like,
I love that.
Come on, Wilma.
It seems like you could, like, I guess in theory you could do it if like everyone set up like calls to go off at a certain time, or like when the device heard
you like
calls
convince
going,
them.
If everyone had their speakers going, and it's like, yeah, we've got plenty, and next thing you know, if you split the population in half,
The thing is actually part of it though is the fact of the unique calls specifically, so they know each other's voices.
Yeah.
So what would actually happen is if you did those calls, they would just come in to investigate to figure out what that other one is, which is why coyote hunting is effective. By running a coyote call, they're like, who the heck is that now?
That's not Fred.
Yeah.
There's some weird noises.
Yeah.
yeah.
So they actually
Followed
found
by
that
loud bangs.
aggressive coyote hunting can minimize population short term, but can actually lead to a boom and increase populations long term.
So what? We just
Ipso facto.
You're damned if you do. You're damned if you don't.
Yeah, they actually found that the biggest impact on coyote populations was larger carnivore like introductions or increase in populations of bear,
the fight
mountain
for
lions,
wolves,
all that kind of stuff, because that leads to increased pressure on them, causing them to limit their territory. They bears more so in wooded areas, and then mountain lions more so in open areas. And several studies determined that increased populations in areas where hunting is allowed, and that's over several years, which means that hunting may not have reduced but actually increased populations locally. So they say that recovery of the carnivore populations, they have a greater impact on reducing coyote numbers than people hunting them directly, which kind of goes against what we've seen, because we've been seeing people hunting coyotes, seeing them, shooting them, whatever, and then now we're not seeing them as much anymore. But I wonder if that's just we're in that swing where now the younger ones are really getting into it, and they're all hanging out in the den more and making babies.
And yes.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the other thing that impacts them is urban development. So cities limit populations by fragmenting the habitat. So obviously you're not going to see as many coyotes.
Unless everyone in that neighborhood's got dogs. Small ones to be specific.
And then suburban development doesn't limit populations because that increases access to those edges that a lot of animals like, where they can hang out over like an ag field or whatever the case, and that increases their access to food, to all sorts of other stuff. So they're finding some things that are counterintuitive. So we kind of have to keep research going to figure out how to properly control numbers, because it seems like they're on the rise from what I've heard. Not what we've seen anecdotally.
And you didn't see any up north, you said?
Yeah, but
This is the first year.
they're around. We did hear them one night.
Sure.
So they're around.
Yeah, I mean, like, what, your 4-hour hunt isn't a good representation of how
Right.
they're really out there.
They're around.
But it just goes to show you that you can think you're doing good work in reducing the population, and then 2-3 years go by, and all of a sudden there's way more than there were, just because.
It freaks me out to know who's doing the research.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
University of New
Because
Hampshire.
we're seeing dumb stuff
Southern New
now.
Hampshire.
Like,
Yeah.
we're seeing dumb stuff now, like the NRC in Michigan, which is extremely offensive and non-scientific whatsoever. As a protection to coyotes, we didn't feel comfortable. They didn't feel comfortable. The NRC didn't feel comfortable with us hunting them during their breeding season,
Ugh.
which is our turkey season. When they're eating turkey eggs, we can't shoot them. So the season closes for a while because they were having babies. It's like, come on.
Who gave them power?
We did, but
There's no threat to coyote populations right now. They're
No.
doing very well.
no, it's not even the threat to it. It's like, well, it's immoral. What?
Yeah, wasn't there a comment about the optics of it?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing was, the reason why they passed it was, they said, is because, like, the optics of it to the outside of, like, us hunting coyotes during their breeding season. It's like, dude, we just got our turkey numbers good. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, use your head for 2 seconds. And the NRC is supposed to operate strictly off of science, and there's nothing scientific about that whatsoever. So they're actually breaking something that we put on them, like as a constraint, and they're just breaking it. It's extremely offensive. I know it's being fought right now. It's just, I know MUCC's fighting it, which is great, but it's just extremely offensive and extremely stupid, the whole thing. That's why it makes me, like, that kind of stuff makes me wonder who's doing the research. Obviously, you said who it
Sure.
was, but it's like, I had heard that before, and I've had a lot of people that, like, spend a lot of time in the field hunting predators
Mm-hmm.
and managing lands, and they see it different.
Yeah.
You know, they go out and they really put the hurting on them in an area, and they're hired to do it for farmers, and, like, it's their job to make sure they're getting all killed, and they go out night after night after night calling, using thermals and shooting these things and whacking and stacking, and they've seen it impact positively for them.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, it could be short term. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know the answer, but I am just always skeptical when
Yeah.
it seems like they're saying hunting isn't the answer, because we know conservation is hunting, and we see that all the time.
I did like this study because it was a collaboration it was across the United States. It was a collaboration with a bunch of different wildlife agencies, DNRs, Fish and Game, all those. And then they had something like 4,500 game cameras all around the United States, keeping track of populations. And then it didn't seem to point specifically to like hunting is bad or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was more, here's how us increasing our land use impacts them. Here's how hunting impacts them. Here's how carnivores impact them. Here's the data we have. There's no conclusion. It's just, this is what we've learned.
Here it
Right.
is.
So it was,
It makes me wonder too, is because we shot the wolves into an oblivion. Hunting wolves is way harder than coyotes.
Hmm.
You can have a lot of wolves in an area. Good luck finding them. They're hard to hunt, man. They're smart. They are difficult. They might not be a wily coyote, but they're really, really, really tough to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And we obliterated them in olden days.
Yeah.
So, and it worked. And wolves are big coyotes.
Hmm.
So it takes more to feed them, but they're smarter and they're harder to hunt. In our experience, they're not going to be tricked as easily.
they're hunting you just as much as you're hunting them.
Right. It's very difficult hunt. Like, I talk to people that wolf hunt, and they're like, you got to know where they're going to be and just be there.
Jeez.
And good luck. Good luck. Their noses are incredible. Good luck.
Yeah.
But we obliterated them. So it makes me wonder, like, if everyone got as freaked out by the coyotes as the wolves, I feel like hunting might work. And that's where that's where the seed of doubt is.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that science isn't right. I'm saying like there's a seed of doubt here.
Yeah.
You know, it's
And
like
that's also based on probably reduced hunting in general, just because less people are hunting.
Well,
Right.
another big part of it too is trapping. No one traps anymore.
Yeah.
That was a lot
It's a
of
real shame. Trapping's
was-
fun.
I don't want to.
uh,
I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I-
I'm not against it. I'm not trying to stop anybody. I just the thought of like
It's not for you.
Not for me.
no. I'd rather go out hunting,
yeah.
like shooting. I feel better about
I
that.
I understand it if like you're like it's not really anyone's form. Of
I
income
understand it.
anymore, but like if you're doing it for the pelts,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to mess your pelts all up.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So I get that.
I do it because I got chickens, so I've got foxes in my backyard, lots of raccoons trying to get into the coop, possums. I've trapped some muskrats just for fun.
Yeah.
Do you have
Well,
a feed of your coop? Do you ever see when the raccoons or when they get obliterated?
I've done that before when I've had a hard time. Like even though I'm trapping, it doesn't seem to be doing anything. And I had footage of a raccoon coming down off a tree onto the fenced pen, like so it's like not coming from the ground. It's like Mission Impossible.
Yep.
You know, getting in and then going in from there, finding a little spot where they could bend the bars enough to get in, and then get in from that way. But they weren't. I only ever had one like that where they actually got into any chickens and they only killed one. Thank goodness, because sometimes they'll go in and just
Slaughter them all?
massacre them for fun.
Jeez.